much. The thing everybody always says, can you hear me at the back? Yeah, cool, okay. Really pleased to be here tonight. Thank you, Alison, for inviting me. It's been 18 years since I did a poetry reading, so I'm a little bit nervous because I've brought 18 years of nerves up. The last one I did was in 2006 in Heswell, so it's quite a long time. But as I say, I'm looking forward to that. I'm reading from 3 different books, and I have to do the sales pitch. They're all available tonight. They're over in the corner by the bar if you're interested in buying any of them. I do introduce poems a little bit, but I like to just get into it and read the poem and leave it to speak to itself as much as possible. So I'm going to start with a poem from a collection called Hang Fire, which came out in 2019. You'll see politics in my poetry, a bit of philosophy, psychology, all sorts of different things. So I'm starting with a political one called A Paper Thread. There's a paper thread, a trail, a trace that leads all the way back to the government. We wondered why we'd not been called upon, felt slightly queasy, a little on edge, then realised that it was all up for grabs. Specious, she said, a waste of voice. And there were protesters too, thousands and thousands, making their voices heard in the frozen city air. Nowhere to be seen in the newspapers. They were busy photographing the heir to the throne, sitting on a chair. We get the media we deserve, so the wealthy owners tell us, and the misgivings of government are washed away by distraction. Nothing to see here, pass along now. Look at that bright, shiny story. And as if we were goldfish, we swim off, mouths open in disbelief. Does that mean Pumpkin likes it?
He did like it.
Okay, needed a translation. I'm going to be really cheeky now because I'm cramming loads of poems into 20 minutes, so I really love that applause, but applaud at the end, otherwise it'll be 30 minutes. But you might not want to applaud anymore, but let's see how it goes. So the second poem is called Not Just Because. Not just because the disrupt is happening all the time. Not just because there are homeless people on the streets and the government wants us to believe that they have to help themselves. Not just because the world is filled with hatred and the poisonous sense of other. Not just because love is something that's packaged and sold, branded and moulded until we can buy it. A giant card, a bunch of flowers. Not just because we watch news headlines as though we're at the cinema and everyone is just acting. Not just because the world is changing with global warming and soon we won't be able to live here. Not just because every Hollywood movie has to have a happy ending. Not just because Orwell was only partly right, the cameras are in our hands and we are working them. I read that on Facebook. Not just because we believe everything people tell us on Twitter and Facebook, it must be true. Not just because everything we thought we would leave our children is being spoilt by everything we have done. Just because we're in a world that is losing hope and someone needs to speak up and create a sense of future. So that's a couple of poems from Hang Fire. I'm going to come back to that again in the second set and read some more poems from that collection. So I'm going to turn now to a collection that came out in 2017, which is called Blue, Experiments in Sound. I love this book, not because I wrote it, but because it's got some beautiful illustrations in it. I was lucky to find a guy called Philip Kingsbury, who is down south in Malmesbury. I've never been to Malmesbury, but I met Philip, and he does lino cuts. That's his kind of thing. But he produced these beautiful watercolours as a response to the poems, and it's a limited edition. There's only a few left. So if you want, I'm really doing the sales pitch now, aren't I? If you want to get a copy, go for it. There's only, I think, 6 left. So. And the book is about a character called Blue. Blue has been a character I've been writing about since the mid-1980s. I've written 4 collections about him. He's not me, but there are traces of me. He's kind of like the anti-me, if you like. He's a shadowy, trickstery, kind of challenging kind of character. You'll get the feel of it as I read the poems. The first one's called Blue at the Crossroads. And it's probably worth just referencing Robert Johnson, who was one of the early blues guitarists, pioneers. There's a legend about him, it's almost certainly not true, depends on your religious beliefs, I guess, that he met the devil at the crossroads, did a deal with the devil, and that's how he came to write the devil's music and play blues in the ways that he did. You'll hear that referred to in this poem. So as I say, it's called Blue at the Crossroads. Blue doing a deal with the devil at the crossroads. One road leads to the light, one to the dark. No idea which is which. Rest heavy, restless sleep, always wondering when to speak. Sounds of Robert Johnson wailing in his ears, live forever and ever without end. Out beyond the mountains, where the heat, haze rise, there's a canyon that will hold this, picked clean. No hope without darkness, doing deals will end in tears. Let go of the clear focus, find himself in the final stages. Up above the eagle's sweep, where the clouds meet the sky, there's a resting place, somewhere to find the why. So the next poem is called Lonely or Alone, and there's a question. So. See, I told you that the blue notes were the best ones, always listening, never playing, saying whatever comes into his head. It's a sun-filled evening, and Blue is standing high on a balcony where the birds fly, looking across the city with a "this could be my playground" look when the starting pistol fires. Time for a drink, then time to recognise solitude when he sees it, then rename it loneliness. Some of the poems in this collection, I was playing around with GarageBand, if you're familiar with that. It's a kind of music making thing. I'm not a musician, can't play an instrument, save my life, and created a set of pieces of music to go with this. You'll be relieved to hear I speak it, I don't sing it because I can't sing either. But it's on Bandcamp if you're interested in having a look at that and having a listen. My kids thought it was brilliant when I told them I brought my first album out in my 40s or 50s or whenever it was. So the next one's called No More Applause. And in this one I referenced Tom Waits. If you know anything about Tom Waits, you'll know in his early years he kind of still does actually, came across as a bit of a hobo, a bit of a kind of drunken wino type of character. That's very much a public face. In his private life, he kind of got his act together, met his wife, had kids, and it's an act. It's not who he really is. He's a great actor too. You'll see why I mention that now. Because he'd always modelled himself on Tom Waits, then he read more about him and realised that the public face was not the private face. It had started as an act, then took him over, but the public face was enough to hide behind, make a private space, family giving enough to get back in control. Blue had taken the same path, been caught up in the act, so that he became the hobo dance he set out to make. He's just not sure how to get back. The dance with death, the curious spectacles, the open lines, everything designed to maximum effect. Then realising that we all have to burn the sense of self. A burning man in the desert, as an effigy to letting go of ego, is the only way to truly rebirth. Open up our soulful space, find a place that we can answer only to ourselves. Blue looks in the mirror, sees the lines on the forehead, hair thinning on top, sees his eyes, but does not recognise. In his deeper memories, he's still 19, still dancing the dance of life. Blue, open to cause, left to effect, no more applause. This one's called Karma Politics, and you need to know that karma is spelled K-A-R-M-A. It's that kind of karma. Here we are, as though opened out, dissected on a table, left exposed by these political channels, the disbelief that a whole population can shift their views from compassion to hatred. Where did the rhetoric of workless and scrounger come from? And why do we accept that for one to gain, another has to lose? And in the midst of all this politics stands Blue, wondering what he can do, hoping for inspiration, like a cheap TV hero, probably all that he can muster, inevitably out beyond his comfort zone, pale politics. Not sure he can raise the interest and keep it there, and not sure why he has been pushed to the front. But he is still offering to stand up, count, and be counted, speak whenever he can, create a stir and wonderment. Let all that stand with him be open to the change and be there when it matters. When the karma is being counted, it's important to be waiting with the beads in our hand, add up the total and be ready. He hopes, he waits, he passes on through. And for now, this is the last one from this collection. It's called Oblivion. Alone is the only way to be, thinks Blue, misanthropic in his black jeans and rock-taut t-shirt. Every time he holds the audience at this party, speaks out as though it's a crowd, someone finds an excuse to leave the group. He can't see the connection, wants to rant about the election, like some rabid poet with nothing to do but squeeze views of people. In time he will leave, drunk and ill at ease, head for home, thinking as he passes these darkened streets, what could have been? Time passes, alone now in his room, hotel of convenience that no one knows. He thinks he could die and no one would know he was here. How long would his body lie in atrophy before he was found, especially with a do not disturb sign on the door? And he's not sure whether he feels good about this, or filled with horror, the thought of oblivion, of nothing, no consciousness, nothing. Emptiness is a feeling that comes before epiphany. He read that somewhere. He sits and waits, wonders when it will come. A great state of magnanimity. He read that too. All bound in a need for meaning. Let go and out to the furthest boundaries. Beyond the sense of purpose, there are boundless worlds, lost in the shadowy reaches of a conscience. Thank you. I'm not done yet. There's more. So I want to read some poems now from Alice Reimagined, which, as Alison very kindly said, is launched. I'm seeing this as my book launch. It came out 2 weeks ago. The photo on the front actually is a picture of the Wirral at sunset from across the Mersey over in Liverpool. So it's kind of quite, I didn't plan it this way, but it's quite amazing that I'm here, because here is on that photo. It's beautiful. It's called Alice Reimagined, and Alice is another character I've written about quite a lot. Alice is my inner anima, so I'm quite into Jungian psychology, if you're familiar with that. So Jung believed, I think it's quite compellingly argued, that for men they have an inner anima, and for women they have an inner animus. So Alice basically is my inner feminine side. And the book is a kind of series of poems of tangles and discussions and arguments and debates between me and my inner feminine, together with lots of other stuff weaved in as well. I'm just going to read a handful of those now before I break for Helen. So the first one's called Alice's Battle for Good. It started when I realised that I had a page to fill. Just then, when the words bit back at me, I realised for once that she was wanting to say something profound, or at least with meaning. But then it was gone. She eased back into the shadows, unsure how to react to the state of the world, not sure whether poetry was meant to be hijacked by politics, the battle for right and wrong, good and evil. Surely the greatest words were written in a timeless space, not the political space of the now, where people are dying in wars caused by hypocritical foreign policies, when these things are timeless constructs, always happening somewhere. She would smile if she could, but she can't. Then the smile slips in, like my very own Mona Lisa, assured with the sense that it all fits a temporary space between a now and the next one. things improving. Easy to focus on the ill, the negative, the evil. Harder to see the good in between. The things that matter when the battles are on. This is the news, the things that are good. She is watching now. It's a movie scene, like all good realities are, and she is looking deeper, finding the core at the meaning of things, where the flow of the energies is all pervading, bright and light, with a white flight, spent in force, opened of course, captured and shared, wonder and hope, the difference between wrong and right. This next one is Alice Emerging, which takes, to kind of give you the clue of what's going on here, it takes the first few words of each of the first few lines of the previous poem and then gives a response to them. It kind of makes more sense on the page, but hopefully it'll make sense as you hear it. So Alice Emerging. It started, that would be at birth, when I realised she was there within me, confusing me, that I had a page somewhere to capture my thoughts, to fill every idea and thought a grand archive. Just then, each sacred moment held in equipoise, when the words give meaning to the life, bit back at me, hold me hostage to my archetypes. I realised for once this would make sense in reverse, that she was wanting, Alice was wanting everything for me, to say something, but waiting for me to listen, profound in her linguistic simplicity, or at least she would be if I would let her, with meaning, open the last line out to balance her wings. This is called Despair. It's not as depressing as that title sounds. So. I despair of Alice sometimes, especially when she is out and I have no one to talk to, or she is in and I have no one to talk to, because she doesn't always listen. It is true, but then neither do I. We are joined at the hip, conjoined twins, never separated, and yet we can see things so starkly differently, me and my twin sister. I sometimes wish she wasn't, but she is. There it is, my twin. Despair is in the air, like a broom clearing dust from one side of the room to the other, and then back again. What is the point of it all? A staring into the abyss of emptiness, without being nihilistic, is easier said than letting it get the better of me and my twin sister Alice. For she is all there is to see, my twin and me, watching each other, letting it be. This is called Please Open the Hatches. A sliding together, materials sparking, wishing I knew what I had done to offend you. Like a waitress at table, you say, just one last time, can I help you? Filled with grief, with loss, with the agony of what we do to each other. Massed graves, blood on our hands. The politics of one is the responsibility of all. Spinning to the split of my stomach, like the last flights of a dying hawk. Love and birth, death and spite. Everything spliced together. It just doesn't fit. This is the inbred nature of a world in turnaround, in chaos. Please open the hatches and let me out. The idea of anima and of the inner feminine, Jung says, we develop those senses of our feminine side from our mother and our grandmother, because those are the initial figures in our life, the people that are kind of the strongest influences when we're very young. So this poem is called Your Mother and Your Grandmother. It's dedicated to my grandmother, Caroline, and my mother, Jean. You can probably tell from my accent, although I've been here 45 years, I'm not from Liverpool originally. And I originally come from a little village in the Midlands. So, your mother and your grandmother. Caroline was born in this village, gave birth to Jean, oldest of 4. Then Jean lived in this village too. A family with roots, never moved away. The graveyard has my relatives, but none live there today. Caroline was a strong, imposing woman, until her husband Reg died. Then she stayed at home, strength twisted inwards. Jean died before her husband Henry, a life of retirement never realised, waited too long and then gone. Their impact on me, their care, their phrases and lore, their love and compassion became who Alice became. A grandmother, a mother, no daughter, 2 sons. The traces of their lives woven into my insides. In case you're thinking, how long is this guy going on for? 2 more poems and then we'll stop. So this next one's called Reimagined 1. This is all I can find, a bucket of spanners and a box of old cogs. Like building a new machine out of rusty old parts, wondering why the end result squeaks and rasps. Even on the boat across the estuary, watching the stars glimmer, there's a breeze in the air, and I'm breathing heavily, wishing for the special kind of evenings that are only seen in films. Every imagination is more than a dream brought to real. Sometimes the space between what we see and what we feel is as much as a deep investigation brought to the book. Imagine all the cogs, each one split in 2, then melted down, everyone up for grabs, the sculpture of our lives, as cautious as the teak and mahogany inlay on each bench, each desk, each chair. We've been there. We were watching the thin ones as they hid, hoping not to be seen. The clatter of hammers on steel, the drop that causes the damage, the reimagined one. And finally, for now, this is called individuation, and it explains a Jungian concept of individuation, which I don't need to explain because I think the poem explains it pretty well. We come into life formed and perfect, a whole. We learn and we hope, we connect and we yearn to be a part of something bigger than us. Then as we steer through childhood, facing kindness and cruelty, we learn to hide parts of us that are unacceptable to others. The shadow grows and we split, point by sharpened point, until we are fractured, fragments that hold together. This person run with family, like this with friends, different again at work, all things to all. Midlife crises happen in 7s or decades, each time a painful shift, a realization that our facts are illusions, and over time, imperceptibly slowly, we individuate, return to the wholeness where this all began, back to the completion, the integration of persona, of anima, of shadow and trickster, an easing of suffering, a comfortableness in the skin. Thank you.